Ba-ba-da. Sweet. What is going on, you beautiful people? Hello, user 1771370522987. That is quite the username. Hoping you didn't come up with that all yourself. What's going on, Shauna? How is everybody tonight? Sorry, I'm a little bit late for today's session. We have been doing food prep for like the last 2 hours or so now. So, and still not done. Well, almost done, but getting there, I guess you'd say. So we'll give it like a couple more minutes for all the peeps to pile in, but we're going to be talking about Contrave this week or today. Meant to talk about it a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, there were so many good questions around Ozempic and stuff like that we ultimately didn't get to it. So here we are, we're retrying it, if you will. And in case anybody ever wants to rewatch one of these lives or anything like that, they are all posted up on YouTube at the official Dr. Dan. You can find them and all kinds of other videos, and you can find the answer to whether Saxenda is better for weight loss or Ozempic. All righty. We're good. All right, everybody. I think we're just going to dive right in. We're going to talk about Contrave. So some of you might be on it, some of you might not be on it. It's kind of not nearly as popular as Ozempic, Wegovy, Saxenda, and all those guys. And I'll kind of review part of the reasons behind that. But it is certainly one of the other agents that is on the market that can be used for weight management. Now, the interesting thing about Contrave is that it's actually a combination of two different medications, specifically bupropion, the SR or sustained release formulation, and another drug called naltrexone. Now, bupropion SR, the brand name of bupropion SR is Zyban, and that originally came to market for smoking cessation. Bupropion, the extended release formulation, is called Wellbutrin, and that's generally used for depression, anxiety, and sometimes ADHD. So that's kind of the bupropion component of it. And then on the flip side, we have naltrexone or Reviva. And what naltrexone is it is a opioid antagonist. So I'm sure, well, particularly here in North America, we are currently having the opioid epidemic, and one of the drugs that they use to resuscitate individuals that are having an overdose is called naloxone. Naltrexone and naloxone are very similar type of molecules, slightly different in duration of action and potency and all those sorts of things, but they essentially do the same thing in that they block the opioid receptors within our body. And interestingly enough, the opioid receptors will play a role in our appetite regulation system. So what we know from the research and literature is that these drugs, naltrexone and bupropion separately, may have some benefits in terms of weight loss, like just a very, very small, like maybe a percentage or two. Definitely doesn't work for everybody when they're used separately, but when we bring them together and combine them into one tablet or their separate formulations and stuff, what we find is we get a synergistic effect in terms of helping with weight management and weight loss. And in the best case scenario, when we're looking at weight management and stuff like that with Contrave, what the studies show us is it really depends, kind of maybe 5 to 8% weight loss from baseline. 8% was kind of more seen with pretty intensive lifestyle changes and management and stuff like that. So certainly that was that component helping it. But 5% is probably more maybe a real life example, if you will. In saying that though, I have seen people lose tons and tons of weight. With Contrave, I find it's really hit and miss. There is some people who, if they're going to respond to it, it works like a hot damn. And then there's other people who it either does nothing at all, or maybe they get a little bit of benefit, and it ultimately doesn't help all too much in that regard of things. My audio is not working. Should be. Is anybody else having a problem with audio? Yay, nay? I think the YouTube peeps are working. Anywho, audio's fine, I can hear you. Okay, so that is individual's phone then in that case. Sweet, all right, thank you for confirming, everybody. So, yeah, anyways, with Contrave, combination of the two medications can be effective in that weight management component of things. And like I said, some people it works like a hot damn, other people not so much. Now, to predict who that individual that it's going to work really well in is, I haven't quite figured out the formula yet. I kind of have maybe some inclinations in who it might work well for. If it's someone that maybe has untreated ADHD, maybe some underlying depression or anxiety. So we're kind of hitting two birds with one stone. Those are the individuals that seem to get maybe a little bit more benefit from Contrave. But again, I've just seen it in some people who say trialed Ozempic or Saxenda or Wegovy, got no response whatsoever. And then we switched them over to Contrave and they're just like, this has changed my life. So really depends person to person. And yeah, so it's kind of, I mean, it's good at what it does and certainly can be beneficial and can definitely be an option. When we compare it to Ozempic, Saxenda, and Wegovy and all those guys, if we look purely at the data and the trials and stuff like that, it isn't as effective. Wegovy at the max dose with, a majority of people reaching 15% weight loss, and then Mounjaro 20%, and Contrave majority were reaching 8% in best case scenario. So not effective if we look purely at the data, but in the individuals that I've seen it work in, yeah, works really, really, really well. So how the medication works is that the two drugs work together and are essentially working in the appetite regulation system of the brain. So up in your hypothalamus and in an area called the POMC. I cannot recall what that acronym stands for right now, but that's kind of where it's acting within our brain. And ultimately what it does is the combination not only help to decrease just your hunger and appetite, but particularly the naltrexone component at the opioid receptors helps to decrease your liking of food. So our opioid receptors, those are the same receptors that endorphins will bind to. So, the thing that runners get when they go running and stuff, that endorphin high. Well, we get a release of endorphins when we eat really good food. And so if those receptors are blocked, when you say, eat your favorite cookie or something like that, you might note that, oh, that wasn't nearly as good as I thought it was going to be. And so what it ultimately does is it kind of down regulates the expected reward that you were going to get from eating that cookie. So the next time you see the cookie, you're going to have less of an inclination or a craving to go and eat that cookie. So that's kind of some of the aspects and ideas behind it. Appetite, liking of food. Like I said, some people, it might be a case that they just have a dysregulation with regards to this pathway, and overall it works very, very effectively in helping to manage weight for them. So that's kind of the ins and the outs. I guess the other big things to be thinking about is that with Contrave, a lot of people will hear that you can't drink while you're on this medication. I'm not entirely sure where that comes from. I'm assuming some people have kind of gotten it mixed up, but naltrexone by itself, so that component of Contrave is used in alcohol use disorder. So it reduces your cravings for alcohol and stuff like that. So there might be something kind of going on there with people thinking that you can't drink on it. You can still consume alcohol while taking this medication. You just might, again, not get much of a pleasurable response out of it, or you might have noticed a decrease in cravings towards alcohol and stuff like that as well. With these kinds of medications that we use for anxiety and depression and mitigating and managing your mood, sometimes they can, with alcohol, can further depress your mood or something like that. So still want to be mindful of using alcohol, but it's not that you can't drink altogether. The only other thing that I can think of is that in large amounts, when you're binge drinking or consuming lots of alcohol, alcohol can lower your seizure threshold. And what that means is basically like the line where your brain will become overactive and you'll have a seizure. We all have some line. Those who have epilepsy, it's obviously very low, and most of us are way, way high. The problem is that bupropion at very high doses, not even close to the doses that are in Contrave here, but at very high doses of like 600 milligrams plus a day, bupropion can also lower that seizure threshold. So if you're consuming lots of alcohol and you're like doubling your dose of Contrave that you shouldn't be taking, then you might be at risk of a seizure, but otherwise not necessarily a concern in that regard of things. And the only other really big thing we're concerned about is that if you take any opioids, so if you take codeine, morphine, anything for like pain relief, that isn't like Advil or Tylenol, if it's something that is an opioid-based pain reliever, you can't take it with this medication because your opioid receptors will be blocked, and ultimately it just won't be all that effective, or it'll block those receptors and suddenly the opioids won't be working, and you'll maybe take more or what have you, and ultimately can cause an overdose. So definitely bad news bears. And if you are on the medication and you go into hospital and need surgery or something, making sure you tell them. They're probably going to ask you to stop it just in case they need to use opioids to manage pain or anything for you. So that'll be kind of, some of the things in that regard. If you have blood pressure, high blood pressure, making sure your blood pressure is controlled before you go on it. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's any other ones. Other side effects: nausea, headache when you first start it. Some people do experience some constipation sometimes, but otherwise pretty well tolerated. We start with 1 tablet once a day for a week. That helps to mitigate our side effects. Then we go up to 1 tablet twice a day, so 1 in the morning and 1 at night. Then we do 2 tablets in the morning, 1 tablet at night, and then finally we get to the full dose, which is 2 tablets in the morning and 2 tablets in the evening. If maybe you're needle adverse or Ozempic's not working for you or Wegovy's not working for you, Contrave may certainly be an option. So that's pretty much that I can think of. We will open up to questions. Some people already got some questions and stuff like that. So we'll dive on in here. Nice cut, G. Thank you. Cheryl, can you take Contrave and Ozempic? So technically you can take them together. If like those are the only 2 medications that you're on and you have no contraindications or anything like that, you technically can take both medications together. No concerns or issues in that regard of things. But, before we jump on and adding another medication for weight management, really need to look at, have we optimized everything else in your dietary patterns and stuff like that. I've been kind of noticing a pattern lately where a lot of people are, seeing the results of these medications and are kind of like, oh, all I need to do is just go on the medication and I'll lose weight. But these medications, they only help to make it easier for you to make more mindful choices in the foods and stuff that you're eating. If you're not in a calorie deficit, you're not going to lose any weight. Like you could take as much of this as you possibly could, but if you're still consuming more calories than what your body is burning, the weight is not going to come down whatsoever. So it's not something you can just take and voila, you're going to lose weight. I mean, most people, it does reduce your appetite, so then you are more inclined to just consume less calories, and that ultimately leads to weight loss. But if Monday through Friday you're eating pretty good, and then Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, you're binging, overeating, and consuming a large amount of calories, alcohol, all that kind of stuff, then yeah, you're going to be blowing your calorie deficit and that sort of thing, and ultimately not losing weight. So it technically can be added on, but we definitely need to look at optimizing all the other aspects of your lifestyle patterns and stuff like that, because we could add the drug on, but if you're still not on a calorie deficit, you're just going to be taking 2 drugs that are very expensive, ultimately doing nothing for you if you're not in a calorie deficit. So yeah, that's kind of the ins and the outs, or the technical, if you will. 786, Contrave increased my appetite. So sometimes it really, I guess the one thing that kind of we do note with it, and what can kind of happen with some of these antidepressant type medications, is it's not so much that the drug has per se worked opposite and caused the increase in appetite. What's generally happening in this regard of things is that there was maybe some underlying anxiety or depression or something else that was going on in that regard. And then that anxiety or depression was ultimately leading to you having a reduced appetite or just a reduced drive to eat altogether. And then we add the medication in. It has bupropion, an antidepressant. Your mood starts to improve and stuff like that. And so at the same time, then your appetite also starts to come back and return. So that can be one of the symptoms of depression, is that you have a reduction in appetite. As your mood improves, so does your appetite. And so it can be like, oh, it was the medication that caused it. And while it indirectly improved your mood, your improvement in mood was actually what drove and led you to increasing your appetite and calorie consumption and stuff like that. So always good to kind of tease it out and stuff. But yeah, hopefully that kind of provides some insight / fun fact. June, you need to turn up your sound. Cheryl, have you heard people on Ozempic lose desire to drink alcohol? Yeah, actually, there's some research right now being done with Ozempic and the other GLP-1 receptor agonists, and actually looking at them as a treatment for alcohol use disorder. Now, how it's ultimately working in that regard of things is, again, within the reward centers of the brain. That's where these drugs are all working and decreasing your appetite and food-seeking behaviors and stuff like that. But for some people, it can actually decrease the cravings or the want for everything from coffee to alcohol and what have you. So it's decreasing the drive towards those things, and ultimately, you get a reduced desire to consume and drink alcohol. On the flip side of things, what I also think is kind of like another sub thing that's going on is that, as you start to maybe start making other changes in your life, maybe you're becoming more active with the medication, and so you're engaging in other health behaviors and stuff like that, the desire to drink alcohol may go down, because it's just not a part of your day-to-day life and stuff like that anymore. Like it doesn't fit into the lifestyle that you're now creating. And I'm not saying alcohol is bad or anything like that, but more and more recent data is kind of showing that even a drink a day kind of thing is not necessarily the best thing for your health overall. And so there might be this component where people are changing their overall lifestyle, and then ultimately that's just leading to a reduction in alcohol consumption and stuff too. So a couple of factors potentially there, but certainly it independently might be something that's helping with reward and alcohol use and stuff. Nikki, can you help? I'm in pain right now with stomach suffering, pains, and sulfur burps, etc. So I mean, that's very kind of nondescript as to like what's going on. Sulfur burps, I mean, we could say is maybe like heartburn or something like that, but looking at how you might manage heartburn and that sort of thing could certainly help with it. But ultimately following up with your family doctor and making sure that they're aware of what's going on and how they can best support you and stuff is going to be kind of your best bet in that regard. So and I have a ton of videos on my YouTube channel that you can check out where I've gone through like all of the various side effects of Ozempic and such like that, and how you can ultimately mitigate and manage some of those side effects. So Wendy, if Ozempic didn't work for weight loss after 5 months, would you suggest trying Saxenda? So as I was kind of saying previously, I mean, the foundational aspect, well, first off, we need to look at, well, what are we defining as not working? Was it just that you had the reduction in appetite, but the number on the scale didn't go down? If it was that the number on the scale didn't go down, but you had the reduction in appetite, you simply were not achieving a calorie deficit. So in that situation, switching you over to Saxenda, you're going to get the exact same result unless you get yourself into a calorie deficit. Now, Ozempic tends to be more potent than Saxenda. And so if you didn't get appetite reduction, or, you know, it didn't help you enough to reduce your appetite to get into a calorie deficit, Saxenda probably isn't going to get you there. But yeah, you've got to kind of look at those other components and factors of things in your lifestyle and see where things are at before kind of making the decision to switch to another med or what's ultimately going to work for you and stuff. You know, if the drug's not working for you and you're not currently tracking what you're eating every day, you know, you have no idea if you're achieving a calorie deficit or not. What I'm finding is a lot of people, you know, will say that these drugs are not working. I get them to track their food intake for a week and they're like, oh yeah, I'm way overeating here, and here. Humans are awful, like disgustingly awful at estimating portions and stuff like that. And I'm not saying you necessarily need to count calories per se, but you got to have some kind of way to track to know where you're currently at. It's kind of like, you know, saving money for your retirement. You don't just kind of assume that you're saving money. You actively kind of monitor your finances and making sure that you're putting X amount away every month and whatever else. And kind of take a more active participation in it. Same thing goes for our weight. Again, the drugs they're nothing special, and they definitely require the full gambit of things to kind of look at managing your weight. Nikki, using Ozempic, think it doesn't agree with me. Don't feel it helps with hunger, just causing pain. Yeah, I would just look towards chatting with your doctor for sure. Cheryl, oh my God, my alcohol and coffee use is way down. So cool. Yeah, it definitely can help to reduce the cravings and want for those things. So yeah, lots of people are kind of noting that, and some people are even, you know, maybe not the happiest about that. If you really enjoy drinking coffee, for example, and suddenly it reduces your cravings for it and even just want for it, can be kind of a bummer in some respects, right? So Carol on YouTube, Contrave has decreased my cravings, but not the hunger that much. I've been maintaining for the last 2 months after initially losing 10 pounds for the first 3 months. So awesome, fantastic. Glad the cravings are kind of working for you. You know, hunger, appetite, that sort of thing. I mean, there's a lot of things to kind of look at. And again, it would have to go back to looking at what your current dietary patterns are. If you're maintaining your weight, you're fundamentally not getting into a calorie deficit. So tracking and looking at what your current calorie intake looks like, and then, kind of solidifying that component. And I don't mean necessarily just track it for a day. Even tracking it for a week would be like the bare minimum. I generally recommend tracking your food intake for like a month, and then you can make some really sound decisions as to whether, yay, I'm actually in a calorie deficit, or nay, I am not in a calorie deficit and I need to tweak and adjust things. And then fundamentally, the other aspect is actually looking at just taking a diet break, taking the focus off of weight loss and dieting for a period of time, and then looking to increase your calories, increase your activity levels, focus on health, all those beautiful things. And then you can potentially create a new calorie deficit and hopefully have some further success. I'll actually have a new document or a new thing I'm typing up right now that'll go over this in much more detail here in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for announcements around that, but it'll kind of give you a blueprint, if you will, to kind of follow and to possibly help you with that kind of stuff. So Wendy, drinking way less coffee too. Awesome. Sophia, is decaf coffee okay? I mean, you want to suck what joy there is left in life, decaf coffee is just fine. Yeah, no problem on that aspect. Kim, I've been on Ozempic since October. I haven't lost any weight, but my A1C went down from 12 to 6%. Awesome. So independent of any of the weight loss effects, Ozempic and the GLP-1s are very effective at helping to manage blood sugars. I mean, that's originally why they came to market. And then we also found that they had the effect on appetite regulation and ultimately helping with weight management. Again, yeah, if there wasn't any weight loss, fundamentally you just weren't in a calorie deficit. So yeah. Ellie, is there a specific time frame you should stay on Wegovy? The time frame for staying on Wegovy for like 98% of people, I would say, is for life. The 2% of people that can actually come off of these medications are the ones who pretty much turn their lifestyle on a 180, if you will. It's not impossible. I've had people for sure do it. I've worked with lots of clients, lots of patients that definitely can do it and have maintained their weight loss and stuff. But it's not easy. Yeah, you really have to focus on things like you're getting adequate amounts of protein. When you reach your goal weight, you're bringing yourself up to your maintenance level of calories. You're looking at increasing your activity, particularly with resistance training and lifting weights potentially, but doing at least an hour of activity every single day, eating consistently throughout the day, managing stress, getting better sleep, working on all the underlying trauma and underpinning things that might lead to things like emotional eating and stuff. And then also not restricting, certain foods, like not saying I can never have cookies, being mindful about having the foods and treats and stuff like that you enjoy. You should never cut them out entirely, because restricting them is just going to lead to massive cravings. I mean, if I tell you not to think about the purple elephant, what are you going to think about, right? Same thing with certain foods and stuff. If you cut them out and you enjoy them, well, you're going to get cravings for them and you're going to want them. And then the more you restrict them, the more you're going to want them. And then eventually you'll binge on them. So yeah, most people, 98%, need to stay on them for life. Because yeah, most people aren't able or don't have the privilege to be able to turn their life around in that regard of things, and to consistently maintain it into the long term. So before someone or those 2% even consider coming off of it, I would say at least 1.5 years would be the absolute minimum. That's about as long as it takes to truly solidify a new habit, is about 1.5 years, probably up to 2 years. And when you can say you've successfully incorporated a new habit at that point in time, potentially looking to come off the medication, and going from there. So Wendy had a reduction in appetite, no movement on scale, eating 1,500 to 1,700 calories a day, only got to the 1 milligram dose. So yeah, at the 1,500, 1,700, I mean, without knowing specifically the details and stuff like that, but if the scale or the number on the scale is not going down, you're not in a calorie deficit at that point. Now, I don't know if I'd want to decrease your calories much further. I find 99% of women, including, unless you're very, very tiny, like 5 foot and what have you, I have almost nobody that I take anywhere near below 1,500 calories a day when I'm working with them. And so, yeah, 1,500 is kind of like the minimum. And yeah, everybody I work with is still losing weight, weight considerably at 1,500 calories a day. So I would say needing to take a closer look at kind of what you're doing on a day-to-day. What is the effects of using it? The effects of using what? Saxenda, Contrave, let me know. Wendy, Saxenda is covered on my insurance. Ozempic wasn't, so switching to Saxenda, fantastic. Yeah, if you can get coverage for it, that's great. Sophia, what's Saxenda? So Saxenda is similar to Ozempic. Saxenda was actually the first medication to come to market for weight management in the GLP-1 medication class. So it's a GLP-1 receptor agonist. It mimics the GLP-1 hormone that's produced by our body, and it decreases our cravings and drive for food and stuff like that. The big difference between it and like Wegovy and Mounjaro is that it's a once daily dosing versus a once weekly dosing. So, yeah. Melissa, I'm on Saxenda. Is there a limit on how long I can be on it? No, these drugs can be used for life. We've got 20 plus years working with them now, and there is no harms, long-term, short-term, anything like that. So no problem on like a limit or anything like that. Sandra, would there be any benefit to use both Saxenda and Ozempic together? Not unless you want a whole bunch of side effects. So they're both exactly the same molecule. They're both GLP-1 receptor agonists. Saxenda is just once daily. Ozempic is a once weekly dosing. Adding them together is going to provide zero benefit other than overwhelming your GLP-1 receptors, which will become saturated to a point, and ultimately you'll probably be vomiting your guts up and potentially not pooping for a week. So no, nothing but bad things could come from it. Martha lived that way for decades. It was all consuming. Or Martha, I guess. And then Sophia, thank you. My pleasure, Sophia. Glad I could answer all the questions for tonight. Well, this might be a shorter one, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because I have to go finish my food prep and stuff and still go for another walk to get like another 3,000 steps or so in today. So yeah, I think next week we will be back again for a Wednesday night live. I don't exactly know what we're talking about next week. I have it on my calendar. Check out my my page and stuff like that. You can see what I've got coming up and that sort of thing. If you want to see my previous lives that I've talked about, all of them are on my YouTube channel. You can skip around and find the various parts and questions and stuff like that. A lot of the questions that you probably have, I have probably answered them 4, 5, 10 times or so on various lives and stuff like that. So be sure to check them out at the official Dr. Dan. As well, you can check me out on Instagram and stuff like that. Feel free to give me a follow there. And then, yeah, check out my website, healthevolve.co. I've kind of just opened up my books and I'm taking on new clients. So if you're wanting support on your weight management journey and stuff, you can check out my website and potentially book a consultation with myself there. And we can see if you're a good fit for our program or not. Yeah. So be sure to let me know and if there's any questions or anything like that. Next Wednesday, we'll be back. I'm trying to catch up on all the TikTok-y and stuff like that. But yeah, as always, you beautiful people, it is a pleasure. And I will chat with you again soon. So have a good night, everyone.